Have you ever got to a stage in your life where you said, I've had enough, I'm done? Well, recently I got to a stage where I'd kind of had enough and I was done. I routinely suffer with OCD, and this can affect me in things such as turning light switches on and off, checking that something's closed, and then going back to it repeatedly and having anxiousness about that. So recently, there's a situation for me that really kind of outlined something that was prevalent. So I woke one morning a couple of weeks ago, and I wasn't feeling particularly good. I felt anxious. I was feeling unwell. I kind of developed a headache, and I just wasn't feeling great. I felt really kind of all over the place. But I got up anyway, and, I basically did all the stuff that I needed to do to get ready to go to work. And it came to going out, and I went to the toilet, and then I started to check things. And I usually check things before I go out. And it usually is repetitive, but I can sort of cope with it. But on this occasion, I was literally checking the light switch over and over again, and then I forget that I checked something. I forget that I checked the plugs, so I go and check those, and I was just all over the place. I couldn't do it in any specific order. I kept forgetting that I'd done stuff, and so it got to a stage where I walked out of the room. I had this anxiety built up inside me. I was just really just not faring too well, and went out to the kitchen, and then I forgot to check the fridge, right, which I'd normally check, and the plugs in there. So I went over and checked those, and then I went to put my shoes on, and then I sat there, and the anxiety started to build. And then I looked over at the door, and I suddenly got up after I put my shoes on and went to check again. I then started to worry about work and whether I was going to be late or not, and I saw that it was particularly late, and so I thought I'd better get going. And so I quickly rushed out the door and so on, locked the door and checked that 1,000 times, and I had to go back and check that too again. Jumped in the car and started driving down the road, and I literally got to the end of the road, and the anxiety had built to such a degree. I felt so anxious that I literally turned around and came back so I could check the light switch. Then I went and I drove up the road again, and I got the same anxious feelings that were constantly, bugging me. And in a sense, I knew that this light switch was off. I knew the lights were off. I knew that I checked everything, but I had this anxiousness, and it's like, it was funny to me because the anxiousness, it affected my memory, because I literally couldn't remember doing any of the things that I'd done before. And so I kind of worried about that all day. I had this anxious streak going on. I was really sort of involved in the worry. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And if I did get distracted for any amount of time, it was because, I'd actually engaged in a conversation with a customer or whatever. So it really didn't stop until I came back and I got through the door, and the first thing I did was look at the light switch, and it was off. And so there was a sigh of relief, but at the same time there was this frustration. I sat down in my bed, and and I just slumped back, and I felt a sense of despair about the whole situation. It got so bad. And then I said to myself, I've had enough. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And then the immediate feeling after that was this sense of anxiety, and it crept over me. And then I felt like I couldn't do anything about it. It was almost like I just felt like a victim of the whole situation. So a couple of days later, I was sat on my sofa, and I began to think about the situation, and I wondered, have I really had enough? And then I thought to myself, if I've really had enough, then why don't I just stop? And at that moment, I suddenly realized it was because I had a deep fear of being attacked and getting things wrong. And this was why I was constantly checking things over and over again. And I realized also that it was like a coping mechanism that I developed in my childhood, which I believed was helping me to avoid getting told off. And so now that I knew this, it uncovered the possibility of actually resolving the issue. And I started to wonder how I was going to do that. And in the end, I came up with this process. I sat down and first I wrote my problem down, and this helped me to actually, see what I was dealing with. Then I wrote down the emotion I felt, and then I wrote down the action I was going to take instead. The last thing that I did was I wrote a statement which would help to calm my anxiety. So my statement was, it's okay for you to feel anxious. And so after that, and over the past week or so, I have been using this and have noticed quite a significant change. And I've noticed that I'm checking things less. I am feeling less anxious. And it's really helped out in other areas of my life too. So what are your feelings on this subject? Have you ever felt like you've had enough and then question whether you actually have or not? Just leave a comment in the comment section below, and let's start a conversation. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you like my content. See you later, guys. Take it easy.